All right, so Nicki Minaj made an appearance on Turning Point, and it left a lot of people wondering, has Nicki Minaj gone full MAGA? I want to talk about how we get to this point, what she said at the event, and let you all come up with your own conclusions. Now, to preface this video, I do want to say that I have been following Nicki Minaj's career ever since her mixtape days. I think that as an artist slash musician, she is cemented in the music industry. Her contributions cannot be taken away. And as a businesswoman person, she has had great success, and I just sort of admire her as a business person as well. So you take that for what you need to take it as. But here we go. How do we get to this point? So we have to go back a couple of months. Nicki Minaj makes some tweets where she's talking about Christians being persecuted in Nigeria. These tweets get the administration's attention, which then leads to her giving a speech at a United Nations summit. This speech grows her conservative fan base, which then land her this event at Turning Point. So what is this Turning Point event? If you don't know what Turning Point is a conservative organization that was started by the late Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is a young conservative who was assassinated earlier this year. Well, his organization, Turning Point, continues to be ran by his wife, Erica Kirk. And this particular event that Nicki Minaj attended was called Turning Point America Fest in Phoenix, Arizona at the Phoenix Convention Center. And Nicki Minaj was talking to a crowd of young conservatives. So that's the backdrop. So what exactly did Nicki Minaj say? I can summarize what she said, or I can summarize 80 to 85% of what she said as primarily safe, surface level, generic advice for young people. Some of these points including her encouraging them to have personal strength, to be free thinkers, and to believe in what they believe in unapologetically. Now, generally, this is pretty safe advice to give to young people. I know that there's people online that are taking some of this sort of generic stuff and trying to turn it into something more. I'm not going to do this on this channel. I'm going to just leave it at that. But nonetheless, she did say a couple of things that were criticized and things that I believe that are worthy of bringing up. The first thing is her admiration for President Trump. She used words like dashing, handsome to describe him. And the cadence, the way she said it just seemed very theatrical. It seemed very like pandering. And it just seemed like she was going out of her way to cater slash pander to this conservative audience, not authentic at all. When there was another moment when she was talking about Vice President J.D. Vance, where she called him an assassin. Obviously, it got awkward because Erica Kirk's husband had been assassinated. As soon as Nicki Minaj says that she covered her mouth, you knew that she had messed up. I personally viewed this as her being authentic. If you follow like hip hop or urban culture, calling someone a killer or an assassin is usually like viewed as something positive, like, hey, like this person gets to it, sort of thing. I think that it was just like an error on her part. And again, it kind of feeds to this narrative that people are saying that a lot of what she was saying it didn't seem authentic or genuine. It seemed like a lot of pandering, a lot of theatrics, a lot of going out of her way to be extra caterish to this audience. Another sort of point that she made that supports this theory of her pandering is when she made this really sort of odd comment about Black women, saying that they don't need, Black women shouldn't need someone with blue eyes and blonde hair to downplay their beauty to sort of justify theirs. And it's just really, really odd that Nicki Minaj would even insinuate this because historically speaking, the standard of beauty in America has been the blonde hair and blue eyes. Specifically, with little girls, ever since they're little, they get the Barbie, the stereotypical or prototypical Barbie blonde hair, blue eyes. Nicki Minaj wants to be a Barbie. And even into adulthood, we see just countless movies, TV ads, etc., and how like the blonde hair, blue eyes has been the standard of beauty, and then like the people of color not as beautiful. So it's kind of weird how she tried to flip that, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. And like I said earlier, it just feeds to that narrative that, like, hey, she's going out of her way to pander to this audience, and she's just saying sensationalist stuff just to pander and cater to them. So what do I think? Is Nicki Minaj MAGA? Let's get into it. I think that we need to take into account Nicki Minaj was born in Trinidad and Tobago, which is a Caribbean country. Where I'm from is a Caribbean country, or at least it touches Caribbean waters. We have a heavy Caribbean culture, Panama. And yes, a lot of Caribbean people are raised, their upbringing is very conservative. So could her upbringing have been conservative? Yes. That doesn't always mean that because a person has conservative upbringing that they're going to practice conservative politics. Also, take into account, and I'm not saying this as a slight, but Nicki Minaj is a mother. She's a woman going into her middle age. And she's a multimillionaire. People with a lot of money do tend to lean to the right. People who are a little bit older tend to lean to the right. So you couple all these things, and is it possible that Nicki Minaj leans a little towards the right in her political views? Yeah, I mean, conservative upbringing, you're at the age where, she makes the type of money that usually leans towards the right. I think it wouldn't catch most people by surprise to think or to think that Nicki Minaj leans towards the right. But when we're talking about MAGA, is Nicki Minaj MAGA? That's something completely different. We're talking about the extreme right, with some sort of like really, really out there views. And I personally don't think that just because you're conservative or you have a conservative upbringing, or even if you politically you identify as a conservative, not all conservatives identify as MAGA. So to make a claim that Nicki Minaj is MAGA is like, it's a bit of a stretch. Is it a stretch to say that she leans to the right? Not so much, but to say that she is MAGA is quite a lot. Now, I understand why people are saying that, particularly the way that she talks about President Trump. But if you watch this video, it's clear that this is a woman who is pandering. Even the way that she was talking about some of these points, it just did not come off natural or genuine or organic at all. So at least the question begs the question, like, what is this all about? As I said early in the video, Nicki Minaj is an incredible businesswoman. I think a lot of her success obviously has to do with her talent, but this is a person who's calculated throughout her career, has been very well calculated, very, very methodical, very well thought out. Everything that she did in her career had a purpose and a mission, and she got it done. I think the more realistic view is like, does she lean to the right? Probably. Is she MAGA? I don't know. So why would she say these things? And why would she go out of her way to pander so much? I think it's safe to say that she could have her own agenda. What is it? We probably don't know. There's probably, unless you know her personally, I think for most of us it would be difficult to know what is her agenda. But that would sort of be the only logical thing as to why she would pander so badly and insert herself into like a political conversation that she wasn't even a part of. There's probably something she's trying to accomplish that we don't know. I think for me is the more likely scenario, and her gaining clout or influence in that sort of world is probably, in her mind, could potentially help her achieve her end goal. But that's all conspiracy theory. That's all conspiracy theories. We don't really know. I think for me, the biggest point in this video is, historically speaking, there have been artists and musicians who have gotten involved in politics. Right off the bat, like Sammy Davis Jr. is an example. He got involved into politics, and it greatly hurt his career. Then we have other people like Bob Dylan, who has gone into politics. For example, his song about Hurricane Carter, and people loved it, and it spread awareness, and it did good for his career. Generally speaking, I believe that musicians are often a good vessel, a good medium to spread awareness and spread a message, right? So back to the Bob Dylan example of the Hurricane Carter song. It was a great way of spreading this message of injustice, racial injustice, and bringing awareness to the masses. But the fact is that at the end of the day, Bob Dylan is still a musician. He knows something about the topic. He might not necessarily be the most intellectual or the most versed or read or studied on social topics, social justices. He's just a guy that saw something that occurred. He was like, this doesn't feel right, and express himself through music, and that helped bring awareness. At the end of the day, even though we have Bob Dylan back in those days, you still needed some of the social leaders. You still needed the Malcolms, the Martin Luthers. You still need like those real people who dedicate, those real activists who dedicate their entire livelihoods to studying the topic, doing the groundwork, whose opinions and thoughts have been challenged and scrutinized and have proven themselves and because they are based in historical facts and current facts and et cetera, et cetera. Like, you still need those people. So even though it's okay for a musician to have a social take or political take, that's a good like starting point. But then they don't replace like the actual activists who are doing the real work. And I think as a consumer, we shouldn't generally rely on entertainers and politicians, entertainers and musicians for like our social commentary. Again, like I said, is it a good place to start to get awareness? Yes, but go look up some of the activists who are putting in the work, who are authority figures in those subjects. Do your own research, check your own sources, you know, all those things. Do the work and really find out for yourself, and just don't depend on entertainers and musicians, because oftentimes entertainers and musicians know enough to like write a song and bring awareness, but they're not necessarily like an authority figure in a certain subject. So I think, just to put it in perspective, is Nicki Minaj, do I think Nicki Minaj MAGA? I don't know. She definitely seems to lean to the right. But generally speaking, we probably shouldn't put too much weight into like what musicians and entertainers have to say politically. I think they, like I said, good starting ground, but we really need to sort of do our own research, look up who are the authority figures, what are the arguments, et cetera, and you know, study and look up people who really know what they're talking about when it comes to these topics. So I'm sorry if I didn't really answer your question. You come up with your own conclusion. Let me know what you think, and peace out.